Alright guys, welcome back to today's video. Today we will look at how you can create the perfect offer for your Ecom brand, which components you have there, which values you can tweak, and just how to do it in general. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Let's get started with the definition. What is an offer in the first place? And it sounds very simple and straightforward, but I still think it's important to lay that out. An offer is not just your product and the price. It is obviously the product itself, the price point, but also the incentive around it, right? The discounts, the guarantees, the urgency, the scarcity, the social proof, the authority, like everything that makes up the buying decision in the customer journey, right? Even the payment options that you can provide in your store, because we know how massively that can influence the conversion rate as well, right? So all of that is like relevant for the offer itself. And why does that matter? Because obviously we talked about it before. If you break down ROAS in three simple variables, it's mainly like, okay, cost of traffic, conversion rate, AOV. That makes up the formula of the ROAS. Broken down simply, right? But if we look at it, so cost of traffic we can only influence to a certain degree, right? Because you kind of have to pay the market price in the auction. So cost of traffic we can already not influence. But then we have AOV and conversion rate, which is something we can definitely influence quite a bit. But how do you do that? How do you optimize for higher AOV? How do you optimize for better conversion rate, removing friction, building trust? You do that with the offer as a primary tool, right? Obviously there are a lot of different things, but it's all about the offer in the end. If the offer is not interesting, if the offer is not good, if the offer doesn't incentivize a higher AOV, good conversion rate, little bounce rate, like what are we talking about, right? So if we look at the conversion rate, for example, and these are like some stats I pulled up on the internet, doesn't really matter what's the exact number, right? Global average conversion rate for Ecom brands, whatever, like between 1.5, between 1.8, you know the drill. But we also know there are some guys who can absolutely crush it, right? And they have like way higher conversion rate, way higher AOV. That's all the difference between a brand that makes a couple of $100 a day and a brand that pulls in a couple millions every single month, right? It's like everything dialed down and the offer is scalable in the first place. Because everybody's talking about, yeah, you need to like test more ads and like better ads and better ads and better media buying, better creatives. And obviously like nobody says that's not important, right? But the thing is, even if you have the best ads in the world, how will it help you if your offer is broken in the first place, right? If you try to scale the broken structure, you will always get broken results. So that's just as an intro overall, why we even discussed it here in the first place and why it's so important. And let's check it out now, how you can tweak it. So we have 7 core components to a great offer. Component number 1, quite straightforward, is the value proposition. So why does the customer need this in the first place? What problem does it solve, right? Focus on the pain points, on the emotional buying triggers, but obviously also it's like features, benefits, right? Simplest definition, why does the customer need it? What problem does it solve, right? You need to paint the problem first, picture the transformation, like typical problem, agitate, solution framework, quite simple, right? Take them through the whole process and why it makes sense. So the core value proposition, again, like we said, emotional appeal versus logical appeal. Very straightforward, nothing new, right? You just need to be aware of it so you can go through it step by step and tweak those things. Component number 2, and that's something you probably heard 1,000 of times already, Homosi made it quite popular as well, but that's value stacking, right? But it's something I personally always put a lot of attention to it. And it depends on the type of product, right, and what you're selling and what you can do. But value stacking is always powerful. Because imagine if you have something that's already valuable and you always adopt the mindset of how can I do more, right? How can I put more in it? How can I make it even more valuable without obviously like sacrificing your profit margin, right? Because you can always say, yeah, we like give a free product, a free gift, or like free shipping or whatever. But like sometimes you also have to like evaluate, okay, like does that even make sense, or like would it hurt my profit margin too much, right? So you want to like one side increase that value massively without like also like increasing your costs or like the downsides overall for your business, right? But in general, like that's one of my favorite components because it always makes sense to think about how can I make it even better, right? How can I increase the value even more? Try to increase the value, stack the benefits, focus on the outcomes, and just try to like get the absolute most out of it. That it's almost a no-brainer to not buy it, right? And you can do that with every product. You can do that with every niche. That's not even like relevant for e-commerce only, especially when you like sell a service or like in the lead gen department. You can also like utilize that 100%. Component number 3, obviously, like we all know, that's one of the main components, is the pricing, right? Here's what we cannot like set the prices randomly. Obviously, we need to get a certain profit margin as well, but there are a lot of things you can do, a lot of things you should do. We all know that we don't do it sometimes, right? A lot of people just disregard it and set the prices randomly, or they just put the random multiplier on it. They are like, yeah, I need the multiplier of 3 to get like this profit margin, but they don't really like think about it, right? There are like some of these like very simple pricing tactics you all know, like the left digit effect, for example, where it's just like, it's basically, okay, instead of $10 you say $9.99, because like the first figure is, or the first digit is what stands out, right? And it makes the pricing seem more attractive. Everybody heard about that before. Price anchoring, that's very powerful sometimes. I like that, especially in bigger stores or like on collection pages, where you, for example, put your bestseller at the first spot, but then next to it you have something that's kind of like similar but a little bit more expensive, right? Because what that does, it makes your bestseller has a slightly more optimized price look way more attractive, right? So price anchoring is huge. Price anchoring is huge. I like that for collection pages. You can also do that on your product page sometimes, but especially on collection pages, I see it to be quite effective. Even like simple things like, of course, the sale price, the compare price, right? When you have a sale and it's like $49 instead of $99. That's also price anchoring, right? In combination with the discount. Dollar off versus percentage off, also something a lot of people don't really know, so that's not as commonly known. But research shows, consumer psychology shows that sometimes like numerical values, right, where you actually show the actual saving in numbers instead of percentages, is more effective than a 20% discount, right? Like if you see the actual number. In my opinion, it depends a little bit on the context. I want to make it as easy and straightforward as possible, but that's something to consider as well, right? And then tiered pricing, that's something as well, what we mean with that. Like here, for example, we did a separate video, bundles versus volume discounts, right? Can be quite effective as well. Again, it depends. You need to find a sweet spot where you don't hurt your profit margin too much, right? So output needs to be higher than the consequences. And that's not self-explanatory, because a lot of people, they just have like random bundles, random volume discounts, and they increase AOV, they increase conversion rate, they get much more sales, and at the end of the day, it turns out, all right, profit margin got fucked, right? So you need to pay attention to that, super important. Component number 4, and that's a big one, and it gets underestimated a lot, are the payment options you can provide. There are certain markets, certain countries where certain payment methods are hugely popular and cannot really operate without it, right? So Germany is quite a well-known example as well. The German market loves PayPal, right? You cannot really operate in that market effectively without PayPal. I mean, you can, but you just have to be aware that the consumers there prefer PayPal, and you will probably see a way better conversion rate with it, right? So that's just something to consider. It's a part of the offer, and you have to be aware of the market you're selling in. Can I effectively scale with the current payment methods I have there? Do I need to enable another payment method, offer more payment methods? So that's something. And then we have like premium bonuses, kind of like goes hand in hand with the value stacking a little bit, right? Having like the bonuses on top, a free gift sometimes can go a long way. Like we had this store, for example, in November, December, where we like offered a little gift card in addition to the order, and it worked exceptionally well, right? That's something we will discuss later as well. Like obviously all these things need a lot of testing. I need to like test, okay, what works best for you in your niche, in your current situation, also in regards to the current timeline of the year, right? Something I will show you later. We will talk about it later. All right, component number 6, power guarantees, or like guarantees risk reversal in general, right? Really simple, basic principle. On one hand, you want to increase trust in you, in the product, in the buying process, and at the other hand, the other side, you want to eliminate risk, right? You can do that with guarantees, money back guarantees, building trust with like social proof, authority. So like you want to like eliminate the perceived risk, because if they trust you, if the offer is great and everything makes sense, the perceived risk is low, perceived trust is high. Obviously that will increase conversion rate, right? And there's a lot you can do in that regards. Like we said, okay, social proof, authority, guarantees, FAQs even, right? To like remove the anxiety a little bit, provide answers to their questions. Super important, like all of those things matter. That's quite straightforward. And then like scarcity, urgency, of course, like always part of an offer, right? If you're like more aggressive, can increase conversion rate and AOV. Be smart about it. Don't use like fake random scarcity where everybody can just like see through it. That can even hurt you sometimes, right? For example, I don't know, when you have only 3 products left and you run with the same banner like the whole year round, right? At some point it like will not be effective anymore and everybody sees, oh, it's like one of these like fake banners, right? So it needs to be real, needs to make sense. Again, also something that can, like those components can be applied to every niche, right? So that has nothing to do with e-commerce per se. That's just how an offer works. All right, very interesting. Now, which are the variables you can test easily, like the low-hanging fruits where you can play around with it a little bit? All right, perfect. Next, now we look at the variables you can test. And for that, it's important to say you usually want to just like test one variable at a time, right? I will show you that later as well, but just to outline it already, one variable at a time. Make sure you test it for a sufficient time period, so like you can actually gather enough data and don't make decisions based on emotion. Also something we discussed the last time, right? So check it out. Okay, one variable, obviously, like we said, like play around with the pricing, the discounts, bundles, volume discount. That's one variable. Very straightforward. I don't even want to like go too much into it, right? Just makes sense. But again, here you also need to track them, and that's also important with the testing. You need to establish the baseline, and with all the variables, you need to establish the baseline first. Okay, what's the current situation? How long will it test it? And what's the output, right? Do you have an increase in conversion rate? Do you have an increase in average order value? How much? And then again, how does it affect the gross profit margin, or like your profits in general, right? What are the consequences? Like we said before, okay, cool, we have more sales, we have higher AOV, but also profit margin is really low right now, right? Output needs to be higher than the consequences that you receive. So that makes a lot of sense. Timing super important, and I have a lot of stories to tell about that, but timing in terms of seasonality, right? Throughout the year. The natural sales cycles, for example, a discount-based offer will always be super effective around Black Friday, obviously, right? Because that's just the season of the year. So different type of offers work well for different seasons, different times, different sales cycles throughout the year. And like obviously also like different products, different niches, depending on that, works well. But timing is a factor. Like when do you show which offer? Can also be like here, for example, we have like some random examples with pop-ups, right? It's also a timing thing. But it's like timing with everything basically. Then the channel, also channel, right? Every channel has different characteristics, and different kind of offers work better on different channels. Also depending on the audience type, which is the next variable, right? So we can kind of do that hand in hand, because obviously you need a different type of offers if you want to attract new customers compared to repeating customers that are already familiar with you, right? That's a completely different game. That's a completely different setting. If they already know you, if they already trust you, if they already ordered with you multiple times, like that's a very, very different situation, right? These people are not strangers anymore. You already have established a certain level of trust, a certain level of satisfaction. So different type of offers work with those people, right? Generally speaking, it's easier to sell them something as well. So you also want to be careful you don't have stupid offers. For example, I will give you an example of that. I had one brand that they had very consistent sales. Like it was very predictable when they were running a sale. And what we noticed with their existing customer base, because they knew a sale were coming, they were only buying when that sale was coming. So they were training their existing customer base, were kind of like in the market anyway already, always to wait for the sale, because it was so predictable and it was always at the same time of the week, of the month, and always the same thing. It was so predictable. There was no surprise, and we trained the customer to only buy theirs. There was like nothing was special about it anymore. Nobody was buying with the main price. And then there was always the thing, oh, profit margin is low, and with the existing customers, so tricky, so bad. But the whole setup was cooked, right? So see, that's a mix of like timing. These variables obviously like go hand in hand, right? So it's not an isolated thing. There was a mix of timing and audience segment. And then also the type of offers we ran to these audience segments. But then again, also the channel is important, right? Because if, for example, with repeat customers, email is a pretty good channel, right? If you already have them in your email list, and different types of offers work well there compared to other offers. Then like SMS, email, for example, for card abandoners. If you have an offer there to get them back, to push notifications. You have to understand like different type of offers for different type of channels, for different type of audience segments in the end. All right. I just give you the outline here. Obviously, we don't go into detail in like anything specific yet, because that would be a whole damn masterclass here. So I want to keep it as short and sweet to the point as possible. Variable 5, inventory level. And that's a beautiful one. All right, following story. We had this one client. We were absolutely crushing it, right? Sales volume was great. ROAS was great. Profit margin was cooking. It was amazing, right? But there was like this one problem. Well, it wasn't a problem at the time, but like as usual, most of the sales were coming from a couple of very, very strong winners, right? Which is fine. They were very stable. They were very effective for us. But at one point, this client came back to me and was like, yo, Chris, we have a problem. We are selling too much of it, and we are having some inventory issues, which means our winners were running out of stock, right? And I was like, all right. Damn, that kind of sucks, of course, but what will it do, right? We were just like selling too much. We can obviously like slow it down a little bit, control it a little bit better, but we were still, yeah, we need to slow down, scale back, otherwise we will be out of stock in no time, and will take some time until we get new stock, right? So, but then I check his site. I go on his site and I see that we're running this product still with around, what was it? I don't remember, it was like 30 or 40% off. So it was a very aggressive discount. I was like, imagine how stupid it is. You have this product that's already crushing it. You know you're running out of stock soon. Why do you sell it? Why did we sell it with this heavy discount, right? I mean, it worked well for us before. Again, like we were crushing it. We were super happy. But now it's a different situation, right? So variable 5, inventory level, goes hand in hand with timing. Very different situation. The timing says, the inventory level says, we don't run a discount anymore. Quite the opposite. Maybe I even increase the price, right? Or at least I go back to the default pricing. I put some scarcity and urgency on it, like real scarcity. Hey, we only have like 30, 40 products left, order now. And I obviously also like will not push this product that much anymore with the ads, right? I will probably focus a little bit on something else, just not pushing like crazy. And it just didn't make sense. And also like to be so aggressive with the offer, which obviously also like cuts the margin a little bit, right? If I'm already low on stock. So we remove the discount, we put some urgency, some scarcity on it. Not much more, like that was pretty much it. But again, we did all of that stuff and just sold it normally, and we could like control the whole process a little bit better until we were stocked up again, right? But also on this remaining units, we sold them with a way better profit margin because the discount was gone, right? But it just shows like sometimes these very logical things, right, where you just don't think about it because you're like so in the tunnel with your business. But that's just something you have to consider, otherwise you make stupid mistakes. And then what we discussed before already, the offer types. So there are certain types of offers that work better for certain types of product, for certain type of situations, for certain seasons, for certain audiences. and you need to like test and tweak it a little bit. Also check for yourself what works best in your niche. And again, also if you implement something, also make sure, okay, it actually increases your output, right? Because if you get more sales, higher conversion rate, higher AOV, but your profit margin goes to zero, then it's not a good offer. Then it was not successful for you, right? There are a couple of other things you want to track, like for example, repeat purchases. Also very important, also something a lot of people don't consider. Because imagine you have an offer that's crushing it, you get a lot of sales, you have higher conversion rate, you have higher AOV, your profit margin is still good, or like decent enough, you get new customers into the pipeline, and your idea is, for example, with supplement brands, right? Okay, I will make more money in the back end. So you optimized your offer basically for aggressive new customer acquisition, but the real deal, the real money, the real profits you will plan to make in the back end, right? And I also saw it before. So we had this client, we got a lot of new customers, everything kind of worked, and we're like, successful offer. But then we noticed, all right, there are almost zero repeat purchases. Why? Because we created an offer that's so attractive and kind of like a no-brainer in the front end, right, where we get the first foot in the door. But then they never bought again because like only this initial offer was attractive enough for them to buy, right? And they wouldn't buy under any other circumstance. And there are a lot of like other variables where I want to look into it, like maybe customer satisfaction, like product satisfaction wasn't high enough for whatever reason. But that's definitely something you want to track, especially if you run offer types with heavy new customer acquisition, right? And you want to make more money in the back end. You want to see, okay, like why is the repeat purchase rate so low? Again, a lot of different variables there as well, right? So it's not as easy, not as straightforward sometimes, but it's just something to consider as well. And you want to make sure you don't just run a wild offer that gets you that first momentum if nothing happens afterwards, right? It needs to be something that just like makes sense for the long run as well. So there's a difference between, okay, short-term effectiveness and long-term effectiveness as well that you need to consider. All right, that's pretty much it. And then, yeah, obviously very straightforward. Which quality indicators do we have for these offers? Again, what we just said, right? Short-term and long-term indicators. Short-term is obviously like higher conversion rate, higher AOV, more sales, higher click-through rate, and all that stuff pretty straightforward. And then the main long-term indicator for me is also, okay, the repeat purchase rate. Do we have some long-term effectiveness here where the customers come back, or was it really just like this one-time offer was so good that they bought and then we never saw them again? That's something to consider, right? Especially if you want to get repeat purchases. And I mean, who doesn't want it, right? Like kind of like a stupid statement from my side, but fair enough. Customer lifetime value, right, goes hand in hand with that. And obviously also what we said, the margin impact, right? Because if you create an offer that's apparently crushing it, but at the same time you kind of like hurt your margin too much, then it's also not really a winner, right? So it makes sense. The red flags also pretty self-explanatory, so I don't want to go too much into it. This is just for you. I will attach the whole document, the checklist in the description so you can check it out and check it out for your offer yourself. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me see if there's anything else I want to discuss in this video, because I don't want to like blow it up too much. All right, yeah, the framework one more time. Testing framework, super important. Very straightforward, but again, define your goal. So you want to know, okay, what do you want to achieve with this offer in the first place, right? You cannot just do it randomly. Oh, let's try this and like see what happens. Like, what do you want? And again, it sounds so simple, but I also know that people don't do that. So define your goal. Again, set the baseline, super important. Like, how did it work before this offer, right? So you can like check the differences in the KPIs and metrics. Choose the variables that I showed you above. Like, do you want to test this offer type, this audience, this discount? Ideally, pick one variable at a time, right? Like, otherwise you really cannot test it properly, because then you don't know, okay, was it this variable that drove success? Was it this variable that worked or didn't work? Step 4, obviously you can also like A/B test different variables, right? So you like make some moves faster. You can test variant A, variant B, do a simple A/B test, see what works better. Then you run the test, and again the main thing here, what I mentioned before, is like the sample size, how long you run it. Or it's not really about the time, it's about the amount of data that you gather. Because if you run it for 1 month but you get like 4 sales, you know, then it's like still not enough. So you want to have like a sufficient sample size. I will not give you like a random formula now for like how to calculate if the sample size is sufficient. After all, I think that goes a little bit too much into it. Just be aware of it, that you want to have a sufficient sample size. You can also use one of these calculators on the internet. Just don't like trick to yourself. You know yourself, usually you have a feeling for it, if that's enough, if that's a decent sample size, or if you're trying to like trick your brain a little bit, right? Just make sure you don't make decisions based on emotions or like a very small sample size, because then it's just not a valid test and yeah, you're just guessing. Then of course, like, we measure the results, see, was it a successful test, does it make sense, do I like this offer, is it effective for me and my business? Boom, then you can implement that, right? Then you analyze and decide, let's stick to that, let's run it from time to time, like whatever makes most sense, right? There are quite some variables to consider actually, so it's not that straightforward, but it's important to master that to a certain degree. And yeah, honestly, that's pretty much it. I have attached some more checklists and quick guides here for you, nothing crazy. And yeah, I hope I see some good offers from you now, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.